Hello, people in production. It is good to have you back for episode 10 of our podcast. And in this podcast, we are following up on our last interview, part one, with Brandon Worrell from KCSP Machine. And we talked about their rebranding, about integrating new talent with veterans in the shop and cultural dynamics and the power of building your network. As good as that episode was, I think this one takes it to another level, and I think you're going to enjoy it. This episode covers the inspiring journey of a tech entrepreneur transitioning to the manufacturing sector. Brandon shares valuable insights about entrepreneurship through acquisition. He talks about business readiness and how do you know what company you would acquire, or from a seller's perspective, what do you need to understand about what buyers are looking at? Brandon talks about the vital role of communication in the process, and you're just going to really enjoy this. Listen as he shares his insight and his unique perspective as just looking at it through this lens of where's an industry I'm willing to go into and what are the requirements I'm buying. It's a fun conversation. Brandon's just a wealth of knowledge, and I think you're going to love it. So check out episode 10 of the People in Production podcast. All right, let's jump into your journey into manufacturing. So you said you were in the technology space before. Tell us a little bit about the role that you played in the technology space, and then somehow you made that leap from technology into, I want to buy a manufacturing shop. So let's hear a little bit about your journey, if you don't mind.
Well, my earliest professional life was as a web developer. So I started web-based software websites, pretty much self-taught. That was like .com boom, .com bust days. So when I started that, I worked for a couple of different agencies. Advertising agencies, a sports marketing agency, a pharmaceutical agency. So that was over many years, and that was great. And I had a partner that I worked at those two companies with who was more of a creative guy. And so we kind of worked in tandem. And we just got to a point where we're like, hey, we're pretty good at this and we know what we're doing, and we've got some connections now. Let's just do it on our own. Let's go out, start our own business. So we did that. We have the Kaufman Foundation here on entrepreneurship, and they do these, at the time at least, they did these new venture classes. So I really didn't have any business background or anything. Right.
Yep.
But being in a marketing environment, you learn a lot about a lot of different businesses and how they made money.
So how big of a shop was the marketing team that you were at before you guys started exploring your own venture?
The last one, 30 people, not huge.
Okay. So small, big enough to have sizable contracts, but small enough that you're getting a piece of everything that's going on in the business.
Yeah, and I had a lot of experience in pitches and traveling, and so I was learning business skills alongside of doing development, heads down development, and I was also learning how to run teams. I eventually had some hiring responsibilities, so I was kind of developing all those skills. But so we started this business. We went through the new venture program, and that was basically do a basic business plan.
Yep.
And so we did a business plan for a little interactive agency. And once we got out of that, we started it. We started in my partner's spare bedroom, crammed a server into the closet, and started doing business.
That's awesome. Love it.
Paid ourselves peanuts for a while, but eventually we started to grow, started to hire staff. Right before I exited, we were, a dozen employees in an office down here in the Crossroads, just down the road from KCSB, coincidentally. Um, and yeah, well, now we were 50-50 partners, and I think we just, after about 9 to 10 years, we just kind of had strategic divergence, and he ended up buying me out of that company and took it over. And so I exited and did just kind of software consulting for a few years, but I always wanted to get back into business ownership. I just felt like that was where my heart was, right? So I, had started, owned, and operated a agency, and I just that's where my heart was.
Yep.
I'm not really great working for other people, so.
Yep. And for some people that they thrive in that space, and other people, they need to have a say in the bigger picture for them to really feel like they're achieving what they were made to achieve.
Yeah, yeah, I guess that's kind of where I'm at. So,
Yep.
um, I had exited, and I was doing, like, I just started a little software consulting. I was just doing small projects for people for a number of years.
But at
I
that
ended
point,
up,
you're still just working a job for yourself. It's not a company
yeah,
that
yeah,
you're
sole
creating.
proprietorship. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I eventually had one of my customers, who was a software development manager there, had been a former employee, said, "Hey, come in, do some consulting for us, be real flexible with you." I was like, "Okay, sounds good." And then eventually they talked me into a job. So I did take a job, but I was like, okay, I'm still looking actively. So I had sold a business. I had started a business and sold a business, and I sort of knew, like, we basically hired a consultant to help us negotiate, the separation and the value of the company and all that.
Yep.
But I still didn't know enough about just going out and buying a business. So I really dug into the world of ETA, entrepreneurship through acquisition, and it's a big one. So I just, like, got all the books. There's a book by a guy named Walker Dybel, Buy Then Build. The Harvard Business School has a book on buying small businesses, and got into that community and just kind of dug in. So I started really just seriously looking at evaluating businesses in the Kansas City area. I had this geographic restriction because I had family here. I didn't want to move somewhere.
Yep.
And so manufacturing was on my list. So you have to have some flexibility if you've got this geographic restriction. So, what could you see yourself running, And I'd kind of done technology and software. So that was kind of low. I was looking for something maybe a little different. But manufacturing was on the list, and my father worked in manufacturing for 40 some years. There's a company in Wichita called Chance Rides. They make amusement rides.
Okay.
He started with them very early on, and he, worked with them until they absolutely kicked him out the door. But he just loved that job. You know, he always talked about it. He started as a draftsman in their engineering, and then eventually went through several roles, and then towards the end of his career, he was running their production. Uh, and I remember visiting as a kid, seeing prototype rides, and I can remember him pointing out to me these new machines they had that would cut parts automatically. And he was basically a CNC lathe. But how amazing it was. I was like, "Oh, that's cool." So I just, manufacturing was within the realm of possibility for me.
And I just want to pause on that for a minute, because I think some people in manufacturing would say that they don't see that everyone around them is miserable. Like, it's just a bunch of blue collar workers that hate their job and they can't wait for Friday at 5 to go home and get on with their life. I think it's so important that a fundamental influence on your view of manufacturing was someone who loved it so much they couldn't stop talking about it, even when they weren't working. And it's not because, it doesn't sound like it was because your dad always had work on his brain because he couldn't relax, but he loved what he was doing. And
Yeah.
I think that I think leaders need to be very, very intentional about communicating what they love about what their company does, because
Mhm.
it's easy to get so bogged down in production that people don't ever remember that this is a amazing thing, that we're taking a lump of something and turning it into a difference maker. I don't know, you telling that story, just it brought it to life in a real powerful way. I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, yeah. And there's some similarities into the business I had run before in this business. So that was essentially a custom software shop. So people would still just come to us and say, "We need this. We need to make this," and we had to there was customer service involved. There was estimation, and all of that is very similar to how we work now. Hey, I've got this part I need to make. We got to figure out what's going to take us to do this part. How long? What are all the variables around making this part? So very similar to custom software, just it's you know
Yeah.
bits and bytes versus pieces of aluminum or steel.
Yep.
And then all of the production process, the service after production, and then obviously all the regular business functions. So I felt in a custom shop like this, I felt pretty good that it's a different world. There'll be a lot to learn, but I can handle it.
Yep. That's amazing. So you went from a career to having some independence back into a career mode, knowing that's not where you wanted to be. And then manufacturing was one of the things on your radar. And this opportunity came up. And I guess I'd love to shift the conversation a little bit to benefit those who are, they may own a shop and they think, you know what, someday I'm going to want to get out of this. Or maybe they're thinking about retirement now, or maybe they're like, you know what, I've been running this shop for 14 years and I just need something different in my life. And they're wanting to sell it. With you being a year and a half out from this acquisition process that you were going through, what would you tell that guy that's thinking about their exit strategy, someone like you is looking for? And you don't speak for everyone, but to the extent that you can share your journey, what do sellers need to understand about it?
Well, you can go out and if you do some research on the ETA community, you'll see lists of things. Here's what you have to have, and here's what buyers are looking for. So that information's out there. So do some research, but you're looking for something with a good track record, a steady track record, and of like growth and revenue. You might have a specific revenue target you're looking for, but that's very important. And you need to have clean financial records.
Mm.
That's one is pretty key. Like you have to be using QuickBooks or some financial software where you can produce a P&L or a balance sheet, and you have to have those ducks in a row, and you have to have your finances, personal finances, separated from your business finances. So, as a buyer, when I was evaluating a business, if I saw like this seller's personal finances are completely intertwined with this business's finances, that was a big red flag.
Yep.
Because what I'm trying to do is figure out, how healthy is this business as far as its ability to generate cash and profit. And if I can't sort that out, um, that's bad.
One thing I'd like to talk about that, because a lot of small shop owners don't fully understand this, that if if you don't pay yourself, um, I'm trying to think this through. If you don't pay yourself out of the profitability, you're actually needing to look at your role as an employee. And if you leave the company, that money that you are making needs to go to someone else to run the company who will hopefully
Yeah.
run it for the price that you're paying yourself and not underpriced if you're paying yourself less than you make. So for a person to say, hey, I make X amount of dollars and I have this level of profitability, sometimes we distort those numbers because a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll say they were this much profitable, but they don't pay themselves any money. And I think
Yeah.
the really important things to understand is you've got to know where your money's coming from, and whoever is buying the company needs to understand. So, how are you getting paid out of this deal? Are you on the payroll, or are you just taking
Mhm.
draw? And what does that do to the profitability of the company?
Yeah, you really should be paying yourself a market value salary out of the company.
Yep.
Uh, it's like the company should be able to bear that. If not, you need to get it into that shape.
Yep.
And that's probably another key piece of advice is if you are wanting to exit, the time to start getting the ducks in the row is now. It takes time. Like if you do need to get your financial statements together, if you do need to talk to a business broker, uh, do that really early rather than waiting.
And it's
Because
only going to create stability for your company. I mean, even if you're not selling for 8 years, oh, gee, you got it done 6 years early. Now you have to run your company on good books for 6 years. That's only
yeah,
your company. It's not.
exactly. Yeah, that business. So, and I highly recommend going to a business broker and having that discussion because they're the experts that can tell you, here's what you need to do to look attractive. They'll tell you, hey, you need to start taking a salary out because a buyer's going to look at that. You need to start separating out your finances from the business. Um, maybe you need to take a year or two to get your revenue on a growth track. And you're looking at there's different ways to judge the value of a business, but usually it's some multiple of EBITDA, which is a calculation you do from your P&L. And it's I would say generally a measure of your company's ability to produce profit, and so they can help you walk through that and tell you what your EBITDA is, um, and what you can do to improve it. But you also, you know, I wouldn't have come into this shop if I didn't know there was a good staff in place. Like if I had to come in and be the guy running a machine, I wouldn't have pulled the trigger because I'm not a machinist. So you need to make sure that a new buyer can come in and have a reasonable expectation that they don't have to step right into that job, be the technical expert if they don't have that expertise.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you also need to, if you're looking to sell, you need to minimize the day-to-day operations role that you play in your company as much as you can so that there's not that void that occurs when you leave and a lot of tribal knowledge goes. I mean, every
Yeah,
ownership's going to leave with tribal knowledge, but you need to minimize that impact as much as possible. And I encourage people thinking of growing a company they can sell, take time off, get away from your company for a while
yeah,
so that you
yes.
can prove that this thing can run 3 weeks without me and I'm not on my phone all day, every day, holding things down.
Yeah, that is really key. Everything I looked at, I thought, is this person so key to this business that they can't be separated from it successfully? And if I didn't think I could step in and keep the business going once this person walked out, it was a hard no.
Yep.
So you got to get yourself in that position.
Man, such great insights. I really appreciate you, especially since you're so new into the industry. I appreciate you just letting us crack open your brain for a little bit just to understand that
Sure.
process. So you've got great wisdom, and I appreciate your ability to articulate that journey. So, anything else you'd want to say to that person who is thinking of selling their business in the next 2 to 10 years?
um, Well, there's a good book called Build to Sell.
Okay.
I would go read that, and you. And this is not just for people looking to sell, but also people maybe that are operating, looking to buy a business. You need to operate it, even if you're never going to sell that business, right? Or you don't intend to sell it for a long time. You need to run it as if you want to sell it, right? As if you're putting something together to be sellable, because that is good for your business to run it in that way. You know,
Yeah.
it's beneficial to you to run it with that attitude because you'll a healthy business.
Yeah.
Uh, so
There's another great book out there called Who Not How,
yeah,
where you're looking to hire people, not how do you figure this out. And if your solutions are through the people you surround yourself with, then you're building a viable company that's not dependent on you as the linchpin of the whole organization.
yeah, that's another one that's tough
Yeah.
because you want to be step in and take care of things or not spend that money on that person or that consultant or whatever. But
Man, I have a feeling we could talk for another 20 minutes easily or 2 hours even on some of these stuff. You've got some great insights and stuff. One of the things I like to do with my guest is what I call the speed feed round, where I just throw you some questions and you give
oh
me your
boy,
initial response to it. Are you comfortable doing that?
sure.
Maybe comfort's not the, maybe that's not. So big news around here, of course, Chiefs going to the Super Bowl. So if you could, you're shaking your head. That's not your dream come true,
I'm like, I can't believe it. You know, I mean, I just can't believe it. I'm a long suffering Chiefs fan, right?
right?
I mean, somebody listen to this. If you know, like, I went through the Tyler Thigpen days. Like,
Yep.
I
You've been
just
around. You endured the
can't believe
'90s,
it.
and when we
Some of
kept
the '90s were great, but
when the Chiefs kept grabbing hold of 49ers quarterbacks and anyone that
hmm
could, and it just wasn't working out, right? Uh,
hmm
well,
yeah.
so if you could go to the Super Bowl with anybody, who would you pick to go to?
Oh, go to the Super Bowl with
Sure.
anybody?
Yeah.
Well, I would uh, I would have to pick my girlfriend because she'd kill me if I went with anybody else. But let's say I was forced to go with somebody other than her or a close personal friend. Geez, I'll just say Herm Edwards because he's a former Chiefs coach and it seems like he's a kind of a funny guy. He might be entertaining to sit there and watch a Chiefs Super Bowl with.
I like that. I like that one. That's a good one. All right. So for those early morning days at the shop, what do you do for energy drink? Are you a coffee guy? Do you do any energy drinks? What are we going to see you holding in the mornings?
Oh, definitely coffee, and I'm like a big stupid thermos guy.
Okay.
So I come in with my coffee, and my kids like to make fun of me because I have this ridiculous thermos that I carry.
I love it. All right. So, what, in your opinion, is the greatest threat to manufacturing?
Greatest threat to manufacturing? Whew. Right now, um, it's got to be talent. It's got to be having the right people. You know, there's things that manufacturing is going to do to get around this talent issue, and that's automation and technology. But no matter how much you automate it, you're still going to need very talented people to work in manufacturing,
Yeah.
and that's a big problem right now.
Yep. Really good insights. So, what is the most important leadership tool in your tool belt? What do you think is the most critical thing you've learned about leadership that you have to use?
I mean, just communication. You can't communicate enough.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
I wish, I need to be better at it. We all need to be better at it. Talk to your people. Let them know what's going on. Don't leave mysteries.
And that's whether you have a 40-year-old guy or a 40-year veteran or a 15-year veteran or someone who's brand new to your company. That
Yes.
communication is
Yes.
important.
Yes. And if I had to pick a number two, it'd probably be just healthy humility.
Yeah, love that. Great insight. What's one thing that we didn't tap on today that you would love just to dive in deeper to share just some of your opinions on if we had more time?
Oh boy, I don't know. That's a tough one. Uh, maybe big mission of mine is to grow and to scale, and it's difficult, especially with a small shop. So, that's probably a big topic.
Yeah,
Uh, you um, that's on my mind a lot, and is a big challenge that I'm thinking about constantly.
love it. And so I'd encourage people that if they see you at an upcoming NTMA event or any of the networking events, and if they wanted to continue that conversation, you'd probably be interested in continuing that conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
All
Yeah.
right, love it. So if people wanted to find you, Brandon, would they go to kcspmachine.com?
Yeah. There's a contact form there. My email is brandon@kcspmachine.com. That's the quickest way to get on me. I don't really do Twitter. I am on LinkedIn. You're welcome to look me up there and connect.
Very good. Hey, this has been outstanding. I really appreciate you giving us some time today and just sharing some of your journey in manufacturing and some of the wisdom you've had from a career of leadership. And it's cool to see you applying those skill sets in your new context. So thanks again for being here.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words. I appreciate it. It's been great.
All right, man. Take care.
All right.
All right, there you have it. That is episode 10. What a great conversation with Brandon. In our next episode, we're going to be connecting with Ian Reel, and I think you're going to enjoy Ian's perspective on some things. Before I let you go, two things I'm going to ask. Number one, would you subscribe to this podcast and just let me know that you're following along, and then leave a note of encouragement to Brandon. Just let him know what you appreciated about his story, what you appreciated about his experiences and his ideas of leadership. Do that below. That would be great. And then also, if you are not following along on our free manufacturing peer advisory group, that's something that you need to sign up for. You can just go to circleof5coaching.com/free and just enter your contact information there. I'm not going to spam you to death or anything, but that is a way to be a part of the conversation with our monthly peer advisory group. And it's some great conversation, really good content that's supported by a community of people in the industry. So check that out. It is free, and we would love for you to be a part of the next one. That's it. That's all we got for this episode of People in Production Podcast. We'll look forward to seeing you at the next one.